So the question has come up multiple times over the years about why Audubon Stark 60-inch is different appearance than 72-inch. And well, I've done the test. I have the gloss meter values, and I'm going to explain why the 72-inch versus 60 are different in sheen, as well as toss in Edge Premium Defense matte film to compare all three of them side by side. Starting with going over, back in the day when we first created a matte film, Audubon Stark 60-inch was the first version, the only creation. That film has not changed appearance since the creation of it, the inception of it. But when hoods on vehicles started to get larger and a 60-inch couldn't reach, the back corner to the nose of the hood, we needed to be able to create a larger film, being a 72-inch, which is able to one piece the entire hood and cover 100%. So when the demand came, we created a 72-inch. However, that 72-inch, being the same formulation as a 60-inch, doesn't look the same. Why would that be? The 72-inch is created on a different production line. Even though it utilizes the same formulation, things change, such as the coating thickness or the curing speed of the film, or the flow of the coating that's applied to it, or the surface leveling, or even the embossing of texture within a film. All of these play a factor in producing any film. So whether it's Audubon or any other manufacturer out there that may have one or even multiple different sheens or mattes of a film, this is all going to be an issue, I guess, if you want to call it that. So in our case, if you're trying to do a full vehicle and say that the hood requires a 72-inch, but you had planned to do the whole car in a 60-inch, and you only need that one panel to be able to be done in a one piece with a 72, our recommendation is to take 72-inch and do the entire vehicle. That way you're not having a sheen difference, which you're going to see up here, all three of them side by side. Stark 60-inch being in the middle of this, and you'll see that that one looks much darker and richer compared to any of the others. And I'm going to go over why that would be as well. So, getting into the differences in gloss within each one of these films. I'll put up here as well the readouts for the gloss units. Some of you may understand it, some of you may not, but I have my notes here in front of me as well, so I will go over. So, within the gloss clarification scale, or classification scale, sorry, a gloss units for matte finishes is read at a 60-degree angle. So that's light coming in at a 60-degree and trying to refract back in to be able to get a reading, which my gloss meter is on the garage right now. So a ultra matte or a dead flat matte finish would be a 0 to a 10 gloss units. A true matte would be a 10 to 15 gloss units. A satin matte hybrid, is what we're going to call it, is a 15 to 20, and then a satin is a 20 to a 30, and then you start hitting semi-gloss to gloss. So with our three films, so we have Audubon 60-inch Stark, 72-inch Stark, and Edge Premium Defense Matte. We're comparing those three only. So the Stark, which is the middle film out of these three samples up here, you notice it is darker looking, which therefore you just assume is less matte. In reality, at 60 degrees, it has a 11.3, which would be classified as a true matte finish. But it's deep black, ultra flat looking. Why does it look darker, which therefore makes us think that it's less matte than the other two? Because the other two up here look more hazy white, which we would then perceive as being matte. In reality, they're not. Stark 60-inch in the middle looks this way because it is allowing more light to pass in, showing the true color of the base layer or whatever pigment the paint would be. Now, obviously, this is on a gloss black panel testing. It does not have metallic in it. However, you would see metallic come through when you put any one of these films on here. You would actually see the metallic better with the Stark 60-inch versus any of the others. Now, when we do the 72-inch That reads out at a 16.3. That falls within the satin matte hybrid versus a true matte. So we're hitting the satin scale, not the matte scale. Yes, some of them all call them a matte and satin. It just depends on where it is within the gloss values, which they don't generally tell you that, but I'm going to put those up here so you can see them. And you can always put it in ChatGPT or Google search it or whatever, and it will tell you the gloss scale measured at a 60-degree angle versus a 20 or an 85-degree angle. So Audubon Stark 72-inch has a more silky, matte, mild sheen to it, but it has more of a satin to it. It's still an in-between. Now, if you want the most satin or hazy, glowing kind of film, you would look at the Edge Premium Defense. And that one runs at a 21.4 gloss units. So 21.4 falls within the satin category because that starts at 20 and goes to 30. So if we were to read this correctly, it would be Stark 60-inch being at 11.3 is a true matte. 72-inch Stark is a satin matte hybrid. And then Edge Premium Defense is going to be a semi-matte. So it's more into the satin scale within that. Now, when it comes to selecting the film for the vehicle, this is a question I get all the time. Which one of these films is going to match the factory finish of this vehicle? And my question is, sorry, how old is the vehicle? How many times has it been washed if it is a new vehicle? And has it ever been detailed before? The reason why I ask this is factory matte finishes on vehicles that are not wraps, they're actually factory matte paint, are textured clear coat. And some brands like Lamborghini have 4 different versions of matte clear coat. So it can be totally up in the air. You have Hyundai, you have Kia, you have Ferrari. Pretty much every manufacturer at this point has at least one version of matte paint. So the question is, which one of our films, whether it's a 60, a 72, or even Edge line, matches? And my answer is, we don't know until we put a sample on. The main reason is some of our films, 60 or 72-inch Stark, will match a factory finish 0-mile vehicle that's untouched, unwashed. Why does that matter versus a 5 or 10-year-old car or even a 2-month-old vehicle? That matters because as vehicles get washed, as things rub across the surfaces, they slowly abrade away and file down that texture clear coat. Now, if somebody were to be scrubbing on a panel and they scrubbed and knocked down that texture enough, it will end up turning gloss. So the vehicle may start out as matte originally, but as there's wear and tear and friction across the surfaces, it starts to turn to a satin, and then if it continues, it will turn to gloss eventually. So if we were to just take sandpaper and just sand down the finish, it would be glossy, depending on the grit that you used. So in a perfect world, before you ever quote somebody, or if you're trying to match it and say you're only doing the front clip, so full fender hoods, bumper, and you're not doing the full vehicle, or maybe you're doing a track pack, so you're adding in A-pillars and rockers, put a test piece on, put a little sample piece, see if it's close enough to a match, if we can match it, and then educate the customer or the client on whether we do the entire vehicle, which obviously there's a significant cost difference versus a full front, versus a track pack, versus a full vehicle. But you need to educate them on proper maintenance. This is not a vehicle, if it's factory matte, that you're ever going to take through a touch car wash. That is hands down the worst option you could ever do. Back to when I worked at Cadillac and we had Mercedes in-house, Mercedes was one of the first ones to launch a factory matte finish. And they had it on the S-Class, and then the smart cars came out with full matte, and they were terrified to touch these things, to wash them, to do anything to them. I mean, shop foreman was like, don't touch the car. Don't even run through the car wash. Like, nobody's allowed to touch this. Until I educated myself on proper treatment of this. And no, you cannot polish them, even though I have in the past before, but through the action of revolving a pad over it is the act of polishing, not by abrasion. So, sorry, I was going off on a deep end on that one. Anyways, so when selecting one of these films, yes, there's always going to be a color difference between any matte film. Some suppliers even have other versions that don't match ours. So in a perfect world, take a piece of film. We sell them per linear foot, or you could even get a Fandac that has them in it as well. So if anything, get a sample piece, put it on a vehicle, have all 3 samples, because that way you know for sure, do I need to order one versus the other, or so forth, and see which one matches up the best. Educate the client on visual differences. If they're not doing a full vehicle, the wear and tear of the rest of the vehicle that's unprotected, and how it's going to look different than the front, because we're putting PPF on top. So therefore that area is protected. There's not going to be any frictional wear to the factory clear coat versus the unprotected area that is going to continue to age, to thin out, and so forth. Additionally, if a vehicle has been ceramic coated, the question is, how do I remove it from a matte finish? You don't. You're putting a liquid down on a textured finish, and we cannot polish it off like we could on a gloss vehicle and still achieve the factory finish. So if a customer is coming to you, one of the questions you should always ask is, has this vehicle been coated? Has it been ceramic coated, or is there just a spray sealant on there? If it has spray sealant on there, then we can take a body shop solvent like Acrosol or Prepsol or any solvent-based product and be able to remove that sealant or that wax off of it. That way we have a clean surface to be able to work with, aside from potentially claying any minor rail dust from it. We don't want to cause too much friction though. But if it is a actual dedicated ceramic coating on there, good luck applying any kind of PPF to the matte surface, whether it's colored film or a matte or satin finish. It's not going to want to stick, and if it does, we can't warranty that necessarily because it could fail prematurely. And it's just due to not being able to remove that ceramic coating. Hopefully it's not very hydrophobic, and hopefully we can get the edges of the film to actually stick to the panels. So hopefully this information was somewhat helpful for you guys when deciding which film to actually use, or the differences between the 3 different brands, or the 3 different films, the 60-inch, the 72-inch Stark, and then the Edge Premium Defense. So just keep in mind, best case scenario is have a sample of each one of them, so that way you can use it as a reference and to see, you know, which one matches best if a customer comes in, and just educate them on proper coverage, limitations of the film if we're not covering the entire vehicle. And yeah, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to comment, text me, shoot me a message, give me a call, and I'm here to help. Enjoy.
Put up clean, same shade, same line. You stare twice when the panels catch the light. Matte on matte, it's a quiet flex. Every seam so tight, you can't find the edge. Door to the hood, it all blends right. Same finish all around.